in a very Democratic-led state. So I don't know why he thought he was going to get... first of all, he's a Republican. So, one, he's real lucky to have gotten elected in the first place in Bernie Sanders' state. And two, why did he think he was going to be able to get away with something being in such a democratically controlled state and he was a Republican? Hello, McFly? Prosecutors allege that Senator Norman H. McAllister, a Republican out of Franklin, Vermont, over a period of several years, sexually assaulted two women who were his tenants and employees, and that he attempted to solicit a third woman. That third woman called police last week, launching a fast-moving investigation that by Friday was reverberating throughout the state capital of Montpelier. The investigation moved swiftly beginning Monday and ending on Thursday with his arrest. They must have had some pretty damning evidence, if they were able to move that quickly on him. Now, according to court papers, the investigation into McAllister's conduct began Monday, and over the following days, police had two of the women place recorded phone calls to the senator. Now, in the conversations, which are quoted in a sworn police affidavit prepared by Detective Sergeant Benjamin Katz, K-A-T-Z, yes, that Katz, of the Vermont State Police, McAllister made allusions to exchanging sex for rent payments he is due. Now that's, I guess that's solicitation, right? Now, you got to understand, nowhere in the story does it mention the man's age. Oh, yes, it does. McAllister, over at the time, reached by phone overseas, Weston said that upon introducing herself to McAllister in 2007, he says, "It's nice to meet you, but it would have been better to meet you with your clothes off," she said. Now, back in 2007, McAllister was 55, and one of the victims was 25. So back then, that's 7-8 years ago. So the guy is now 63 years old, and he's still doing it. And I got to tell you, there's a picture of him, obviously. He's not a looker. Even from, a guy-to-guy perspective, he's an old man. He's not a looker. Evidently he owns some real estate property, and he makes real estate he has real estate investments and holdings. Maybe he's got some money. It really probably doesn't take all that much to be considered to be wealthy or upper class in Vermont. I'm not putting down Vermont. Vermont is an absolutely beautiful state with a very friendly and very knowledgeable citizens. I love going to Vermont. Vermont's got some quirky laws that I don't particularly like, but I stay out of trouble when I go to Vermont, so I don't have to really worry about those laws. But it's a beautiful state. I have vacationed in Vermont numerous times. I plan to do more of it. And there are places that I will avoid, like Ben & Jerry's ice cream now, because of who Ben & Jerry's is. Not because I don't like their ice cream, but because I do. But I don't buy it anymore for obvious reasons. And if you've ever listened to this program long enough, you will know why I do not buy Ben & Jerry's anymore. But this, they're anti-military. Let me just put it that way. Ben Cohen of Ben & Jerry's is very anti-military. But this guy, he's a Republican. And there's nobody standing up for him. Now, if he were a Democrat, you'd have the Democrats, calling, he was entrapped and blah, and he really didn't do that, and they really didn't like him, so it's a Republican plot to try to get rid of him. You don't hear any Republicans in Vermont saying this is a Democratic plot trying to entrap McAllister and get rid of one of the few Republican senators in the state legislature, blah, blah, blah. No, this guy's look. He is innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law in front of a jury of his peers. If it goes that far, he's got that right. That's who he is. But he's innocent until proven guilty. But if they've got him on tape saying this, it's well, sorry to say that's kind of guilty there, dude. You better make a plea. On to the story that I mentioned last segment. This is from the dailymail.com. A couple raising 10 children in tents on a garbage dump banned them from school and threatened concerned neighbors with guns. Their defense? It's all part of the trendy free-range parenting fad. Now, I have not heard of this free-range parenting fad. So this free-range parenting fad means living in dirty tents in on a garbage dump. I don't know. This first I've heard of it, but again, here's a story. Joel Nogler, Naugler, and pregnant wife Nicole Nogler claim authorities disagree with their free-range parenting style in Breckinridge County, Kentucky. Now, free-range children have absolute independence from infancy. But a CPS report states the family of 12 live in squalor surrounded by broken glass and garbage in 2 makeshift tents. Now, the Child Protective Services, CPS, alerted after neighbors said Joel Nogler threatened him with a knife. Now, according to a report, they seized the 10 kids and arrested the parents after they refused to let investigators speak to the kids. Well, I don't know. Last time I checked, they were not the state's kids. Why would you arrest the parents because they refused to let you speak to? You don't get to speak to kids, another person's kids. I don't care. You don't get to just because, well, we're the government. No, you don't get to. You're going to have to go through the parents on this one in order to speak to the kids. Or, well, I guess, or through their lawyer if they have a lawyer. So a family of 10 children have been seized by Kentucky Child Services after they were allegedly found to be living in squalor in a tiny cabin filled with garbage. Now we're told it's a cabin, but I thought it was... I love these stories. This is why you read through them, and you try to pick them apart in order to try to find the true story. Sometimes it's hard. So let me reread some of the bullet points to you. A CPS, Child Protective Services report states a family of 12 live in squalor, surrounded by broken glass and garbage in 2 makeshift tents. In 2 makeshift tents. Now, go down into the body of the story. A family of 10 children have been seized by Kentucky Child Services after they were allegedly found to be living in squalor in a tiny cabin filled with garbage. So you got to ask, what's going on? Is it 2 dirty tents, makeshift tents, or is it a garbage-filled tiny cabin? Now, already red flags in my mind are going up that there's something amiss here. Why are these parents being targeted in the first place? Yeah, they got 10 kids, big deal. So what? And they might be poor, financially poor. So what? Looking at a picture of these kids with apparently their dad, they don't look unhappy. They don't look dirty, and they don't look like they're in squalor. I don't, I know it's just a picture, but, and then there's another picture of of their home, and there's called the Blessed Little Homestead, and there appears to be, a makeshift cabin, and attached to it is a tent for like a 3-season porch type of thing. But I don't. It's Kentucky. It could be like coal miner's daughter country. I don't know where this is in Kentucky, and people would look at this and they would judge this family and say, this is you shouldn't want your kids to live like this. Okay. But who says that the only way to raise a child is in the city? With a bathroom in a high rise or in a over mortgaged home. Are we that spoiled? Are we that spoiled that that's the only way that we think we can live and raise kids now is in that type of atmosphere? There are many types of ways. But what is happening is that the government is deciding that it's going to limit your ability to decide how you live your life. No, don't doubt me on this, folks. This is what is happening. They are deciding how you're going to live. Now, I'm not an advocate for allowing kids to live in squalor. I'm not. However, if the kids are not really neglected, they're not malnourished, and if all their quote-unquote squalor is that they're poor, that's not an excuse to take people's kids away from them. Sorry. It's not. I mean, especially if the kids are well-rounded, happy. These parents actually, I guess they posted pictures of their homestead on their Facebook page, and kids like to play in mud, and you see some of the pictures, and kids, some of the babies, a couple of babies, they're in what appears to be plastic diapers like Pampers. Now, if you're that poor, you don't buy Pampers. Just saying. If you can't afford, diapers are expensive, man. The Pampers style diapers and stuff, the plastic disposal, that's kind of expensive. So looking at that alone says, well, maybe there's, they have a little bit more than the story is letting on. And so is the government really coming in there and saying, no, we don't like it, so we're just going to take your kids away? Look, part of the problem is that these parents are homeschooling their kids. They're homeschooling their kids. And they're teaching them things that they're not being taught in regular public indoctrination centers, those places, those buildings that we call public schools. So is that the real problem? Is that the real issue? Is that these parents are teaching their kids something other than the approved standard curriculum in a public school? I'm thinking that might be it. That might be the reason why they're being targeted. Oh, because we already know that Obama doesn't particularly like any of us to be Christian. Even though he claims to be one, I don't think that he really is, and he doesn't really like us all that much, all those who claim to be Christian. He doesn't like us that much. And every chance he gets, he tries to rub our nose into it. Every chance he gets, he tells us that we're, second-class citizens. I'm talking about Obama here. Plain and simple. And so now we've got a state moving in to what appears to be a very active, a very healthy. I mean, all these kids look like they're well-fed. None of them doesn't look like they're malnourished. Very happy, well-adjusted, playful, inquisitive children that just happen to live on a homestead that doesn't look like the house across the street from you, probably, or your house. And that, according to the state of Tennessee, is grounds for taking the 10 kids away and probably splitting up those siblings so they're not together. Now, you want to talk about really damaging kids? How about ripping them from their parents, loving parents, and separating them from their siblings? Yeah, I think that's more damaging than anything else.